Well, we are so excited to have Jessie Mueller on the pod. Jessie has a BFA from Syracuse University. She's been on Broadway in On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, for which she got a Tony nom. Nice Work If You Can Get It, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Beautiful, the Carole King musical, for which she won a Tony, Drama Desk, and Grammy Award. She was in Waitress, where she got a Tony, Drama Desk, and Grammy nom. Revival of Carousel, a Drama Desk Award, a Tony, a Grammy nom. And The Minutes, where her work was completely unawardable. It's really embarrassing, apparently, in that work. Also, all over your TV and film screens, she's done some voiceovers. She was in Steven Spielberg's The Post. Secret Headquarters was released recently, and has worked frequently with the Broadway community to raise awareness and funds for various causes, including helping to found the Concert for America, and was recognized for her work in arts education by ART in 2016. Of course, you listeners didn't need any of that. You already know Jessie Mueller's bio, but we give it at the top anyway. Jessie, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you.
I'm going to start you where we do all of our artist guests and just talk a little bit about coming from a family of actors. Can you talk a little bit about what was that approach come college time when if you thought, hey, I want to do this professionally? What were you looking for from a collegiate experience based on where you were 16, 17 or whatever when you're thinking about it?
Yeah, let me go back. Yeah, go back in time. And then I will I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so I came from, my parents are performers, older brother and sister are performers, younger brother's performer. So I was very much in my world. We were around it a lot. I saw a lot of shows growing up. I grew up outside of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. What? Evanston? And
Is that what many people say about Evanston? It gets Evanston?
Evanston?
My first
little bit.
I
don't know. ETHS, that was my high school. We were very
cool. Very cool from what
we were really cool. I think especially me. I bet I was pretty cool at 16, 17.
Most MT nerds are.
MT nerds were so cool. That's why we go into musical theater. So I really didn't do theater until I got to high school. And I mentioned I went to Evanston Township High School, which we all knew in the area as ETHS, and really has an incredible arts program, had an incredible arts program and still does. And the theater department was amazing. And when I was there, a guy named Aaron Carney was running it. And he was really instrumental, I think, in making me think that I maybe had a place in this. It was something I was always interested in, but I didn't do anything really, never anything professional as a kid. High school was really my first chance to try it and, get with the theater nerds and do our thing. And our teacher, it's hard for me to call him Aaron Carney. My teacher, Mr. Carney. I feel like I still refer to him that way. Forever Mr. Carney. Yeah, because he really treated us like we were young adults and like we were capable of things. And I think that helped us sort of rise to the occasion. So then I got to my moment of like, oh gosh, I have the privilege of going to college. What do I want to do? How do I want to do this? I really struggled with whether I should go into theater or not, because coming from an acting family, I had a pretty realistic viewpoint of what an artistic life might look like and the ups and downs of it all.
And maybe unrealistic to expect it would turn out as well as it has for you, right?
I never would have imagined. I still have moments of, I still always have moments of second guessing and like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not good at this anymore. Maybe this is not where I'm supposed to serve. And I think a lot of that is natural, but going back to like that high school age, I really struggled with it. And I think it was my mom that really encouraged me. She said, hey, look, like you're young and passionate about this. Go do this now, study this, try it. And you can always change your mind. You can always do something different. And funnily enough, I had one little correction from your amazing intro. I actually did change my mind a little bit. I started in the BFA program at Syracuse University. And I made a switch in my junior year, I think it was. I switched to the acting program. So I actually have a BS. I have a BS in acting, which I think is hilarious. I'm not sure why it was a Bachelor of Sciences and not arts, but it required me to take a geology course to satisfy
We love
the
sometimes we
science
guess,
portion.
just
Yes.
throw it in there. We're like, probably if it was Syracuse, probably BFA, but no, a BS. That my partner went to Indiana and also is a big theater person and has a BS from Indiana. The same thing.
So yeah, I have a BS in acting. There you go, which I think is
BS
really
in
very appropriate. Yes, and then took on like a combined minor, which it wasn't like I took on a really sensible minor like IT or something. No, it was like art and music history. But I got to this point where the program at Syracuse was incredible, but it was, for me personally, I felt like halfway through my college experience, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want a conservatory experience. I think I want to feel like I went to college. The drama department was so separate from the rest of the college, like even physically. So I made that decision for myself to sort of spend the rest of my time there in a way that I felt was more well-rounded and would suit me better. So that's what I ended up doing.
I kind of wondered, coming from your background, I think some people who feel like they're already super immersed in theater from their family maybe say, I'm going to go get a BA. Maybe I'm not going to spend my time 4 years doing nothing but acting, singing, dancing, especially if you're like, I already kind of have that training. I've already done some of that with my family. So I wondered that of how you ended up at Syracuse. But can you tell me a little bit more about the Syracuse experience? So what did you feel, maybe now both from the educational perspective and the broader education, but also in the acting, musical theater, that realm of things? What do you feel like you learned from Syracuse that you kind of carried forward into your career?
Oh, sure. Well, I think this is still the case. I mean, I was there, a minute ago now, but I think this is still the case. One of the things I valued about the program is I think they really work with the individuals. I think even when I was going to school, musical theater programs were still kind of a new entity. And there were some that were emerging as like the sort of leaders of in that field. And then there were sort of whisperings of like, oh, well, if you come out of so-and-so, you're going to be a so-and-so kind of actor. And you must have gone to this school. You have this style and this. And I felt like Syracuse was really focused on the people they brought into the program as individuals and fostering their individuality, which I thought was very cool. And I felt like I did get that. I did get that sort of attention from my teachers. And I really appreciated it because I went into school feeling like I was trepidatious. I knew I loved it, but I don't think I had the belief in myself to feel like there would be a place for me necessarily. I felt like, especially at that age, I was like, well, I don't look like so-and-so, or I don't sound like who's-y what's. And I'm in between what you might call a type, you start hearing terrible words like that in college. And I get it, there have to be folders in a casting office, but like, I really appreciated that. I think they worked to mold the individual and encourage us as individual artists.
I love that. I remember graduating from school. I went to Carnegie Mellon University, and like people used to say like, oh, you're such a Carnegie Mellon actor, or you're going to be a Carnegie Mellon actor. I'm like, you don't know what that is. Even
what does that even mean? I don't know. I don't know, but it's the kind of stuff that gets thrown around a lot now. And
people like to categorize. Let's jump a little bit so you started off your career in Chicago.
I did.
You worked at places like Chicago Shakespeare, but then really all over Chicago. What do you feel like in that kind of post-collegiate chunk of time as you were building sort of a theater resume? What was that like? And did you see at the time, do you imagine yourself staying in Chicago full time? Like, what was that experience like?
I think maybe I did, because that was sort of the model I had growing up, and it's what my parents did, and people that I grew up seeing in theater there and friends of theirs. I saw that you could live and work in Chicago and have a life and maybe even have a family and maybe even own a house. And, coming out of school, I was like, I had no money. I just didn't envision myself moving to New York. That just seemed like a BAD idea. I was like, I don't have the resources and financial or emotional to like do this. I don't think it's going to be good for me. Which in some ways was, I kind of felt like the odd person out, because a lot of people that I went to school with at Syracuse were from the East Coast, and like, that's what everybody was doing. But I really wanted to come back to Chicago. I wanted to work. I wanted to learn. And for me personally, I'm so grateful I did, because I just feel like that was the continuation of my training. You can learn in a class, in a studio, whatever, but it's not until you get in a process and in a different type of room with people, practitioners who are doing it as professionals. Like that's so much of the gig is figuring out how to work, how you work, how other people work, how to work with other people who work either differently than you do, the same as you do, working with different personalities, different, learning how to pace yourself, all these things, the practical day-to-day things that make actually living and working in your sort of chosen field possible.
Well, I mean, the model of teaching acting for the past hundreds of years has been apprenticeship, right? It's been people watching other people do it, right? It's new that we have this idea of drama school and we're going to teach you in a couple of years how to do everything, as opposed to like you would have apprenticed and then you would have watched other people do it and then you would have figured it out that way.
Yeah.
Your path seems very similar. We just had Sean Allen Krill on the pod a little bit.
Oh, you did?
He's great, and he had also spent a lot of years in Chicago, and then made the jump to NYC. I'd love to hear, like, what was what made you first, I guess, be able to jump to NYC? Like, are you auditioning for New York shows or Broadway shows in Chicago? Do you decide I am gonna try to at least plant a foot there? How do you make that jump?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Sean and Allen Krill because I had seen Sean in so many shows in Chicago, and like my sister had worked with Sean in Chicago. I never did, but the first show I ever did in New York, Sean and I were in it together. And
this was on a clear day?
Yes, on a clear day. Yes, and I ended up auditioning for Clear Day. I'll try to make this a sort of short story. I ended up auditioning for Clear Day in Chicago. The casting office, Jim Carnahan Casting, was coming through to cast the tour of American Idiot. And they had this other project on their plate of this Clear Day revisal. And so somehow my name got on this list. They were like, see this girl while you're in Chicago. And I did, and I came in and auditioned, and I kept going back in for them, which then turned into like a week-long workshop that I went and did. And then there was a month-long lab. And so the team was really in
New York City. So
this is all in New York City. So I'm going back and forth. And one of the theaters in Chicago, actually the Marriott Theater, was amazing. They let me out of a contract that I was in to go do this month-long lab for this maybe opportunity to go do a show in New York. I mean, it was so up in the air. Yeah, the possibility of a possibility of a possibility. Right. And so I kept moving forward with the show, and I ended up doing this lab. And at the end of the lab, the team was like, "We're going to give you the part." Oof. Because they had been looking at me as the cover to play opposite Harry Connick Jr.
And then like, we'll have some stunt casting later, but you'll be
right. Exactly. It was like, so they're going to cast a star, and then like we might look at you as the cover, but they were so kind and and generous to me and complimentary, and we love you, we love what you're doing. And I was like, okay. And I was staying with my buddy Nick from high school up in Harlem on a blow up mattress on his floor, and going to this lab workshop every day. And and then they had plans to bring it to Broadway, and they said, okay, we're gonna give you this part, but you can't tell anybody. Because they wanted to be really in charge, I think, of the marketing and how all that rolled out. And at that point, I had gotten to meet Harry in an audition, and did a week-long workshop with him. And he had been incredible and was so behind me and was such a champion of me in that process. And then, lo and behold, like we get to Broadway and we're working on the show, and Sean Allen Krill is playing Harry's cover.
Let's go! What a small.
And he almost went on one night, and I remember he and I like going through stuff like in the lobby, just like running our harmony lines and stuff in case he had to go on. Harry had something with his back or something, but Harry was able to go on that night. And so he and I chat about that every once in a while. Yeah.
Small, beautiful world.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. And speaking of beautiful, I didn't even mean that segue. So, let's take the journey to this. So, from the outside, it seems like you can see the steady progression of, okay, I'm doing now another Broadway show. Great. And then it seems like you just hit this career jackpot in this amazing role that is commercially successful. It's a critical hit. You get all the awards you can get for it, right? What was that experience like? When that was happening, was it something, first, I guess, was it that experience for you? And were you able to appreciate in the moment, oh my gosh, this is something that's really special as it's happening?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like probably not. I could have could have, should have, would have, but like maybe I could have experienced it more. But no, I
I'm not
mean,
trying
on
to
the,
shame you. I want you to feel bad about
yeah, right. No, but on
I'm glad.
the onset, no, but I take that as a, as a generous thing to learn from, because it is funny. You look back on stuff, and not that you want to watch the traffic as it's going by, but when you're in it. But yeah, on the onset, no, we were just, it was, not a shot in the dark, because we knew we had this incredible canon of music to work with. We knew how much people loved the music and loved Carole King. But I definitely saw it. I remember actually asking Harry at one point, I was like, okay, I got to ask your advice about something. Is this sound like a good idea or something that I should not touch with a 10-foot pole? Like, they're going to do a musical about Carole King. She's still Carole King. Like, she's alive and kicking. She's doing her thing. Is this a terrible idea? And I remember him being like, well, we know the music's good. Like, what's the team like? Who's producing? And how do you feel about it? What's the book like? And so I remember him kind of walking me through that, because I was really trepidatious. And at that
not
point,
necessarily an obvious path to like jukebox success. There wasn't like tons of really successful. They existed.
No,
it wasn't like, oh yeah, of course you can have an incredible jukebox musical. That
no, I mean, we had Jersey Boys, right? And I think they did it so right. And no, I really thought, hey, to me, I thought it was pretty risky. Like I said, we knew the music was brilliant. It could either go, it could great, or it could go really wrong, like in the wrong hands. Because I remember seeing the announcement. In Playbill of like a musical about Carole King. They're working on a musical, and seeing her little picture on the Playbill feed, and thinking like this weird mix of, for whatever reason, didn't make any sense. Like, I want to do that, and also this would go really, really wrong. But thank goodness they amassed the team that they had, and they got the right people around it to support it. And it was a great cast. It was such a great group of people, and Mark Bruni was directing, and we had, but also in the beginning, Carole was very much for the project, but didn't want to be that. She didn't want to be the face of it. She didn't, and
she's
we
not
sort
in
of
there tweaking, giving.
No, and we learned sort of early on. I had an early conversation when I was moving forward with the project, and it looked like I was going to do it, and they wanted me to play Carole. I had a conversation with her manager, who's one of her daughters, Sherry Condor, and saying like, okay, I feel like I'm getting all these messages. Like, I just want to make sure that like Carole wants this to happen. I wouldn't want to step into this without her blessing. And Sherry was like, yeah. She's totally behind it, but it's a tough story for her. Story goes, she went to an early reading and watched the first act and was like, this is really freaking good. And I can't stay for the second act because I know what happens and it's too hard for me to watch. So she didn't see Carole King didn't see the show until months after we were open on Broadway, and she came like in disguise, and we didn't know she was there. Thank God I didn't know she was there. But right. Talking about making you completely nervous, but no, even as it was happening and we were developing it, I didn't know. We did the show out of town in San Francisco at the Current Theater, and I remember, one of the first previews. Because, man, when you're working on a new show, too, you are just, like, in the weeds. You don't know the forest from the trees.
You mean no perspective on, like, is this
no
good?
Perspective. Is this good? Is this working? I mean, you think you kind of feel it, but you really know, like, you're just so deep into it. You don't have fresh eyes. No one around has fresh eyes, That I remember getting in front of, I think it was, like, our first preview audience, and we finished the show, and we were all like, we might have something here. Like, we might be on the way to something. I think this is working. I think people are getting it, and I think they're digging it. It's not just the music; like they're getting behind the characters. The narrative is working. People are following it, and I remember that being really, really exciting. And then just the response from people and the response from audiences, and then God bless it, we made it to Broadway, and then the show ran for like 5 years, 6 years, longer than that. Maybe I'm getting my facts mixed up, but. It was an incredible thing, but no, I didn't know. I mean, I just found out recently, I think the rights have finally just been released. Like regional theaters are doing beautiful now. Like that's wild to me. It's like in the canon.
Are you going to step back in at some small local theater and just be like,
oh gosh, I probably would not have the chops for it anymore.
about that. But so then you jump
I
right
could play
into
Carol's mom, maybe. I don't know.
no, never, couldn't be. You jump right into another smash hit in Waitress, right? So it seems like next you kind of go boom, boom to like sort of really successful, great shows. Are you at this point like, what kind of conversations are you having with representation or with your team?
I thought
Because
you were
like,
going to say, at this point, are you very tired?
are
And
you
the answer would
exhausted?
be yes.
I'm sure that's true too. But I kind of, I think so many of our young actors, I think like, I want to get to that point of really just originating a role or playing on Broadway, but to get to the Carole King place and then to get to the Waitress place, sort of, do you feel any sense of like what's next in the musical theater world? I mean, are you like Michael Jordan, just being like, we got to win another championship? We got to, you're like, I got to retire. Like, what does it feel like to be like, I hit this thing, I hit this other thing? What is next in terms of what are you saying is next for me?
I mean, I think, especially back then, I think I really, it wasn't that I thought, this next step is going to be dot, dot, dot. And then I want to do this and I want to do that. And I had these like specific goals in mind. I've never really worked that way. I think I've always felt like I want the next thing that I do to be like, I want to always have done my best work. Like I want it. And, that is still changing for me, what that means to me, whatever that means to Jessie. Like, and I want to work with really great people. And now the list is extended to like, I want to work with really nice people. I want to work in a great environment. I want to enjoy myself. I want I want it to be a joyous experience. I want it to matter. I want to feel like I'm serving something and it's something the world, I feel maybe should be heard or seen, or that has become very important to me as well. I mean, I think I've always had a little bit of that, but it's funny, we were talking about Beautiful and Waitress, but I didn't even know that sort of thing really was a possibility before it happened. So I think I've been very blessed in meeting great people, working really hard, that sort of has led to the next thing, that has led to the next thing. And that has happened for me. I mean, certain people I've worked with been like, well, I saw you in this, and why do you think you're here? Like that's how this came about, and this connection, that job led to the next job, and things like that.
And at this point now, you've earned the privilege of being more choosy, right? So if there's not a huge another level to reach, it's like I get to be really specific of like what projects I want to do.
Well, and that's a huge word. You just said it right there. Like I've been so privileged in what I've been able to do in the rooms I've had access to and things like that. And it is exactly what that is. It is a privilege. And I think my eyes have been opened and are continuing to be opened around that conversation as well. That I have felt like I was able to walk into the rooms that I did walk into and do the kind of work and get to play in the sandbox with the people I've gotten to play with. Now I've been doing, then there was a pandemic, so no theater was happening. And really it was a little bit before that, but then that's sort of when I was starting to do more TV and film, because that's what was happening. And that's sort of what came back first. And I found out that I really love to do that as well. And got to do some more voiceover projects and animation projects, which I adore. Like I just wanted to be an animated character since the time I was probably 6 years old. So like I will be, the singing rock sixth from the left in any Disney film. Disney, if you're listening.
We were just talking about that before you came on. Our intern and I were talking about that because I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she just started doing the Disney. We just did Moana, and we did Encanto, and I was like, this is the greatest job ever, because like you're like you're like getting on the ground floor for kids and their love of music in a way that like I love doing it with like high school kids with Shakespeare, being like, I'm like the first person teaching you this. It's so exciting to be like opening your eyes and watching like my daughter hear these great singers who all these Disney people are amazing.
Oh, I'm sure.
So good. And she's like,
and that's what that was for me. Like those Disney things, like watching the new trailer for the live action Little Mermaid, like the goosebumps, just because I was geeking out with someone I ran into it at my agency the other day, because we were just talking about how like elemental that was for us. That film, that sound, that Alan Menken music, Jodie Benson's voice, you know what I mean? That it is expanding now, and it's coming to a new generation, and and little black and brown girls are like, I can be Ariel. I can be,
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really powerful stuff. It's really
Yeah.
powerful stuff. Yeah.
What about and it seems like really TV and film picked up a little bit after the some of those big Broadway hits. What was that experience, I guess, of like having you're now very well known in the theater world, and you're showing up to film sets and you're going, okay, now I'm guest star number 3, or I
Oh, I
am
had no idea what I was
number
doing.
6.
I
What
felt
was
like
that
I had
experience to
no
kind of go
idea what I
back to
was
the
doing.
beginning? Yeah. What
Oh,
did you
yeah,
learn
yeah.
from it?
Well, I think I had to learn by doing. I mean, I didn't know how that worked, so I would try to ask friends who had done it. Like I know how to show up for rehearsal, and I'll probably get a script and maybe a book of music, and then someone will
Uh-huh.
tell me we're going to learn this song from 1 to 2 o'clock, and I just had no idea. I mean, you get a call sheet that to me is really confusing to read. So you have to learn how to basically read your work schedule. That was the first thing. Calling my agent, be like, "What does this mean?
What is
It
this
seems like it's in
spreadsheet?
code. What is this
Yeah.
spreadsheet?" Yes, and then you're sort of told to show up, usually to like an abandoned parking lot at a certain hour, often early in the morning, and then you sort of show up, and you're like, ah. And the tumbleweeds are rolling by, and then hopefully some smiley PA walks out and finds you, with a headset, and was like, "Oh, I know you're the one I'm looking for. Are you playing so and so today?" And then you go to a trailer, and maybe it has your character's name on it, and then you kind of. But I didn't even know that stuff, so I didn't.
Mhm.
To me, that unknown stuff really put me. I was very nervous and anxious about that stuff,
Mhm.
but I think I gained confidence just in doing it and learning the routine of it. That
Mhm.
stuff was really, really helpful to me. Be like, okay, I might not feel like I know what I'm doing, but I know I'm going to go to the hair and makeup trailer, and I'm going to get some information there.
Yes.
And then
Little
I'm
tidbits.
going to go
Yeah.
back in my other trailer, and there'll be clothes, and then that'll be informative, and that will sort of show me a little bit about my character. And the
Uh-huh.
way that stuff happens usually so much faster than theater. You don't have
Yes.
this long process. All the artists are kind of combining their work and making it all happen on the day, and you have to process the information quite quickly, and sometimes
Mhm.
settings might change or lines might change, and now I really enjoy that. I dig that. There's something I find really exciting about that, and I think for me personally, it's an exercise in not overthinking things, just sort of
Mhm.
going with my instincts, and that's something that I think that sort of work is starting to teach me. And I really enjoy it. I love watching how everything comes together. I love watching other people work, sort of in like what they call video village, where you can kind of watch the monitors and see how
Mhm.
it's all coming together. I really find that stuff fascinating.
I love it. All right, we're going to take a short break, and on the back end of your break, we're going to dive into your own superpower a little bit more.
Uh-oh, okay.
All right, we are back with Jessie Mueller, and we're going to talk, with each of our artists, we try to highlight something in the performing world that they do extremely well, and we'll chat about. So like with Celia Keenan-Bolger, we talked about vulnerability. With
Mm.
Sean, we talked about generosity. With Annalie Ashford, we talked about comedy. So different stuff that we're like, this person does really well. You have many things, of course, we could have gone in this direction, but I'm going to give you the hardest of them all to talk about, which
Okay.
is I want to talk about like it factor. You could describe it as the charm. You could talk about watchability or stage presence. I think all of those are kind of slightly different things. But I think like combined, it's what maybe helps an audience like see an actor with a gorgeous singing voice and go, that's great. And someone they go, oh my God, this person's a star. I want to watch them. I love this, right? Is this something I would say describe that you of having, which I know is maybe a little ephemeral. Is that something that you feel like you're aware of, that you have consciously cultivated the idea of like watchability or stage presence, or is it something that you're
No.
like, this just happens?
No, I feel like I have no reference point for that. Thank God.
Thank
Like
God. Well,
I don't know. I mean, I do find that stuff fascinating. I can see it in other people. And I always find it
not in
really
yourself.
interesting, like when I go see maybe a new show and there's especially young people that I've never seen before. And it is weird how you can be like, whoa, that
Who's
person,
that person? Yes.
that person. I have no idea what that is.
Do you feel
I
you
guess
could turn it?
I feel really grateful if you think I have that, but I have.
Well,
And
the
I
world
think
can see that. I'm not
if I
saying the
tried
world can
to unpack it and try to understand it, that would be a terrible exercise for me. So I'm not even going to attempt.
You're like, I won't even try. But it doesn't. It's something that you
No.
feel like you could theoretically turn off, right? I think you could be aware of like how not to take the stage or how not to, exude a presence
Hmm.
or something, right? I feel like if someone was
Well,
like,
maybe
"You're
it has
taking
something
this
to
too
do
much
with
space,"
well, yeah, right. I don't know. Maybe if you decided to disengage, if you decided to make yourself smaller, I don't know. The one thing that is like bubbling in my mind right now is the idea of like, isn't it somehow, I don't know, maybe it's all the things you were just saying. It's some sort of connection, right? Whatever that connection is, whatever draws someone to you or you to the other people. But I don't think it's anything I'm in control of.
Right. Not something that you're always
maybe it's something I
around.
could tap into. At best, it's like if I'm the vessel, then something is working through me. I don't know, but I think also the people that I find the most compelling are like, I think it comes down to, you mentioned like a vulnerability with Celia, or like an honesty. If somebody has an honesty to their core, and that is what is showing through on stage, I think that's sort of where connection occurs. But I guess that's maybe different than like it factor. I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe it factor as like from a perspective of like a career is a little different. But there's something like, if someone says like, if someone would give you the direction of like, hey, let us into that moment a little bit more, or like there is something where, to your point of connection.
Ooh, I don't know what that would be. My first thought was like, okay, you need to see more of my eyes. That from a technical aspect, I'd be like, oh, am I looking at the floor again? Yeah, like let us in. Like, which is funny. You work with, especially if you're doing, working with people in like a college arena or working in a class, that's something that I bring up a lot. It's like, I know in life when we're thinking a lot, or we're struggling, if we're feeling down, or like we look down, we go into the ground, we try to ground ourselves, but like on stage, that's usually death. That's like, you lose the performer's eyes, you lose the connection, you lose their soul.
No, I think connection is a really good word with that. I was going to say, like, I feel like in the TV world, let's say if you're playing like a villainous character and someone gave you the note of like, we need to identify with you, like we need to like you, like there is, I feel like you almost know what that would mean too, of going, I can't be unredeemable, so I'm turning up my likability to some extent.
Maybe that's interesting you bring up the villain thing. It's like, do you know you're the villain? Like usually you don't know you're the villain. Maybe if it's like a superhero sort of epic thing, you're the villain, but it's always more interesting if there's, the actions of a villain come from somewhere. They usually come from a vulnerability.
All right, well then let's talk about it from the outside perspective as best as we can. And we're trying to unpack an unpackable thing.
Let's unpack it. Let's try.
If you were watching someone, when you watch someone, you go and your eye goes to that person, you go, I'm so fascinated, I want to see more. What tangible things do you think make you feel that way? I mean, what are the definable things, if they're definable, that makes you go, I want to watch more of that person singing? Usually
I think it's someone who is so in it, who is so in it, who is so so grounded in the space that they are working to portray whatever they're portraying. Like if it's but again, I think it's usually something different from theater than from film. There are moments on film where, to just be technical, it's like, wow, they have a beautifully symmetrical face. Like anywhere you put that camera, anywhere you angle that light, like I want to watch. And so there is that aspect of it from that standpoint, maybe of just, to my eye, what is pleasing, and sometimes it's not a symmetrical face, sometimes it's not balanced. It's just like there is just something about their emotion reads in their eyes, whatever it is. Does this person even know that? I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting on stage. I don't know. It's those people that like glow, and I don't know what that is. I don't know I think I can usually tell if a performer is self-conscious. That will disengage me a little bit. So I think it has to do a little bit with confidence. I think the confidence is not like a thing it's usually not a put on confidence that I'm responding to. It's I'm okay. I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with showing up how I am and who I am and where I am, just as I am. I think that kind of thing usually, that gets me, that excites me, that draws me into the person. It can be someone who is so different from anyone that I've ever seen, and it's just like, wow, you are so you can't help it. And that's also, to me, that's also like the maddening thing, like to tell people, like, you just be so you, and then you know what I mean, especially younger people who are starting out or finding their way, and I think it still kind of applies to everybody, but it's like, it's that truth, man. Be you, and that will shine. You will shine. But, we also live on earth in this plane, and sometimes that feels really hard just to be yourself.
I think for young people, I mean, they hear that advice from every college. Will be like, our college says be your authentic self, and they're all like,
you're like, I don't know who that is yet.
I don't
that's
know who
okay.
That is. I still don't know who that is. I'm 36. I don't know who that is.
Exactly, and that's okay.
Yep.
We're all working on it.
I love that way of describing it. Like, it's so clear that the things that block it, in terms of you're too self-conscious. It's like, now we're not going to see your whatever. If you have that it factor, it's not shining through because you're blocking it. But it's hard to know what are the things other than removing the obstacles to it that like brightens that light or makes it shine forward. Is this something, if you were talking to, maybe sticking with young actors, and I get this question from parents a lot. Of parents would go, I know my daughter's talented. She's really good. I just don't know if she has it. I don't know if she has the thing that's going to make her be successful in this business. What would you say to the parent or that young person in terms of going, how do you know if you have that charm, if you have that likability, if you have that thing that people are going to go, I want to pay money to watch this person sing?
Well, it's what we've been saying. We're trying to define something. We are trying to define something that comes from somebody else's definition. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but it's like the parent saying, I don't know if my child has the it factor. And it's like, well, that's not for you to determine. That's not even for your kid to determine. It's like,
according to casting directors.
Who is determining that? Casting directors, producers, the higher ups, money. I mean, maybe they're the ones. It's like, maybe people just need to, just like, your path is going to be your path. Your kid's path is going to be your kid's path. I mean, I believe that. I believe that God is in charge, and like, I'm trying to do my best, but he is steering, and I am trying to, at this point in my life, align myself with being ready for the opportunities that are at hand. But whatever you believe, that's a tricky thing, because it's like something that's out of your control, sort of, because it's what somebody else is perceiving about you. So the only things you can control from the inside are like, it's like the opposite of all that, which is why it's sort of this sort of undescribable thing, kind of, maybe.
Yep. Well, and it's so hard also because you're like, if what's going to be so exciting and really trailblazing and turn you into a Jessie Mueller is the fact that you're unique and you haven't existed before, it's so hard to know of like.
Which is hilarious, because like, it's hilarious when people say my full name like that, because to me, what I was always worried about in school was like, oh, I'm not interesting enough. I don't look like this. I don't look like a leading lady, and I'm not super charactery, and like have a soprano voice, and I can kind of belt, but I don't look like a soprano, and I don't sound enough like a belter. Like, I'm not enough like blah, blah, like ... who has done it before. So I don't think I'm going to be interesting enough. I had an acting professor who I thought said the most brilliant thing. If you are interested, you will be interesting. It is not your job to try to go out there and be interesting. I don't think. I think that's a death trap. Like, then you're just going to be doing all this extraneous stuff, and you're not in it. You're not in it. And I think that's what's not watchable, where it's watchable, but for a different reason. Like, you're watching that person because they're taking you out of it. It is not your job to try to go out there and be interesting. You are interesting. We're all fascinating, actually. It's more about like what we want to reveal, what we choose to reveal, what we can access that maybe somebody else couldn't access, that makes our interpretation of something unique, which might be that one thing that pulls that just sort of gets that honesty, hits that honest spot in somebody who's watching the show that night, that makes them feel like, oh my God, I'm okay. I feel seen. I know that. I know that emotion. I know that person. I know that feeling. Again, it brings it back to the connection.
It's so well said. All right, when you segue us perfectly, the other kind of superpower that we almost went into, but we'd already done one that's kind of similar recently, was just about your range, and maybe specifically as an actor and vocalist. I do think you're someone people think of as, you said I can belt a little bit and I kind of have a soprano voice. I think people think of you as a great belter and a great legit singer. Like,
thanks.
How do you? Does that feel like that was mostly like, hey, I was born and I was pretty comfortable in these different ranges or different styles, including stuff like, God forbid, you do Shakespeare, you do all these different things, voiceovers now. Does it feel like you're always trying to add to the toolbox, always trying to sharpen certain, parts of your range? How have you cultivated, I guess, such a wide ranging ability?
Yes, definitely. The whole thing about like, I'm always interested in adding new tools to the toolbox and, or going back and, sharpening that thing that hasn't been used in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've been really fortunate in that people have allowed, I don't know if that's the right word, but like I've been able to jump into projects that have asked something different of me.
Right.
And then I get to, and then I get to like flex that muscle. Then I get to, or work that muscle and get it back into shape again to use it.
Uh-huh.
And to me, that's always what has made things interesting and exciting to me. Like I had an amazing voice teacher in college. Her name is Tish Oni. And one of the things I really struggled with in college, in addition to all the other things I was talking about, like, should I be doing this? Should I be spending money studying this uncertain career? And then I was like, oh gosh, well, but don't I need to decide on one thing that I can just really get good at? And that's what I feel like I'm sort of hearing. And that's how you can become successful. But I like all kinds of music and I don't want to just do one kind. And she was really instrumental in being like, okay, so don't.
Uh-huh.
So let's work on all the stuff. She had she was an amazing classical musician and practitioner and understanding of that pedagogy, but she was also a jazz vocalist and she worked with musical theater students. So she kind of did it all. And she really gave me that affirmation of like, sure, do it all. Why not? She listened to what I was feeling and what I was wanting and yearning for. She's like, okay, well, let's do that.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is really incredible.
It's so well said. I mean, it's this weird thing where it's like in high school and you're auditioning for colleges, people are like, show me as much range as possible. You can be as dynamic as you can.
Yes. I can play the old lady. I can play. Yes. And then you get into the real world and you're like, yeah, we only need you to be.
And I think so often actors say, well, let me tell you the one thing that's going to be castable and hireable about me. And it's even sometimes trained that people, the schools will say like, hey, it's probably, what's the thing that's going to get your foot in the door? Let's really make that excellent. And then you can expand outward. But I do think often actors end up limiting themselves by choosing what that is, as opposed to, you don't necessarily know.
Yeah, maybe too soon.
Things. Yeah. Maybe
well, sure. And I think, and I bet in the collegiate atmosphere too, that's really tough for programs and teachers, because it's like, yeah, you want to give people the tools, right? And help them explore learning how to do this and unpacking a character and how to analyze a scene and all this stuff and create range and learn how to do all these different things. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, now we're pushing them out. We're birthing them into the world. Right. And the world is going to want them to be young college students. Like they're not going to go play the old man in whatever play yet. So it's like, right. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if they don't have the vocal range of a Jessie Mueller, if there's someone who goes, you're an amazing belter, we're still working on that legit voice. And it's like, you're probably going to be cast in belt roles before you're going to be cast in those legit roles. Realistically, that's like...
Right. Maybe that's what you're more ready for at this point. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's got to be, I feel you, because that's got to be really tricky.
Yep.
It's trying to get a lot into about 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. Can we talk a little bit about what it is to have your family in the business? So
sure.
I know you have multiple siblings in the industry. Your parents were in the industry. At one point, you and Abby both were playing Carole King, right? You both on Broadway and on the tour. You both did it. Like, what was the experience now of like? Are they all weighing in on business decisions? Are you guys sitting around a round table and chatting about your career?
Oh God, no! That's like the last thing we want to talk about is work. No, when we get together, it's all about like, how is everybody? And have you seen so-and-so in the family? And like, what are we eating tonight? And and how's everybody doing? I mean, yeah, we always want to know what we're up to and supportive of each other's projects, but no, it's definitely not that. God, that sounds like hell to me, sitting around and be like, so what's your next project? And have you thought about maybe pursuing this? And no, that to me personally, that just like made me very anxious. No, we just want to like hang out and be stupid around each other. That's really what we do.
I love it.
But it is nice to have people that you can, if you want to bounce things off, like they get it and they know how to. They also weigh this project versus that project. If you're in that privileged position of like having some choice and, oh well, you know what I mean. I can get my health insurance for doing this project, I'll get the weeks, but this one is really exciting to me. And so I can lean on my family for that sort of thing. And if you ever need feedback or anything. But yeah, when we're together, it's mostly wanting to talk about just being silly and being dumb and goofy
Silly
with
and
each other.
food. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
love it.
food. Food does enter the
Let,
picture a lot.
I'd love to hear a little bit, we're about to play our game, but I'd love to hear a little
Oh
bit
yeah, we gotta
about
play our game.
this album. So My Heart Says Go.
Oh yeah,
which,
let's do it.
Jeffrey Coe, the music director, is a former MTCA student and also used to work for us before his
I didn't
career
know
took off.
that.
Small, beautiful world.
Yeah.
But tell me a little about this project and where people can check it out and all those beautiful things.
Sure. Well, I first got involved with it during the pandemic. A buddy of mine, Matt Hawkins, who I worked with in Chicago, we were in a show together, and he does a lot of in his various lives that he's led. Like at that point, I knew him as an actor and a fight choreographer, and he was with the House Theater, one of the founding members there in Chicago. And so, cut 2 years later, he's now running the musical theater department at Notre Dame. So he writes me this hilarious email. It's like, "Hey Jessie, we haven't talked in a while. Also, I'm running the musical theater department at Notre Dame. Isn't that hilarious?" He's like, "You knew me in a very different capacity," and he was like, "Okay, so I've met this student, Jorge Rivera Herranz, and he's written in this show, and we're working on this show, and it's sort of a concept still, and we've staged some stuff, but like this guy is really brilliant, and he's written this musical." And he's like, "I would love to send you some sort of rough demos that he did." Not rough, they were incredible. Some demos he did, and we were thinking of putting together a sort of more complete demo recording. So this is during the pandemic, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, shoot me the stuff. It's great to hear from you." I hadn't talked to him in a few years, but we stayed in touch. And so he shot me over the demos, and I was like, whoa. I was like, this is a college student that's doing this? To me, it was like taking what Lin-Manuel has been doing, but I also heard a lot of Jonathan Larson. Anyway, I was really excited by this. So I get back in touch with Matt. I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm game. I was like, I'm sitting at home and we can't go anywhere, but I have a mic. Yeah, if I can record stuff from home, let's do it. Let's try it. So then cut to Matt. Matt and Jorge have continued to work together and develop this project. And Matt ends up getting a grant, I believe, through the university, through Notre Dame. And he's trying, we've all gone through the pandemic, and he was like, okay, what's important to me is accessibility. I want people to hear this story. I want people to hear Jorge's music and what we've worked on. And because it's just an accessible piece. It's about a young person wanting to follow their heart. And what if that doesn't line up with their parents' dreams for them and their parents' intentions and goals? We were talking about a lot of parents being like, "Oh God, don't go into musical theater. It's so," and that's sort of what happens with our lead character. He's in med school, and it's semi-autobiographical for Jorge and his experience. He's a med student, and he's like, "I don't want to do this." He's like in his third year of med school, and he's like, "I want to write music." And so he meets these amazing characters along the way, and it's this exploration of, that's why it's called My Heart Says Go, and it's in a couple of the songs too. That theme comes back, like, what does your heart say, and how do we follow our heart, and how do we listen to the outside voices, and when do we and when don't we? But I was really, really compelled by the music, and then Matt came back to me after the pandemic and was like, "Okay, here's what I'm going to do with this money. I want to get a studio recording. I think it's the best way to get this story out there." And he was also really, sure, I guess anybody working on a project would always be open to the big dreams of like, maybe a really amazing production will be done someday in whatever city or whatever town or whatever. But he was like, "I want anybody to have access to this. I want high schools to be able to do this. I want other universities to be able to do this." So that's why they went in the direction of making this the studio recording. And it's really, I was listening to it again the other day because it was a studio recording. The artists were all coming in and out sort of on our own time, in little snippets. It's not like a normal rehearsal process where you're
not hearing everyone.
You're in it and you're hearing everybody's stuff. So like, I was going back and listening to other stuff the other day, playing stuff for my partner Andy, and I was like, this is really good, right? He was like, "Yeah, this is amazing." So I'm just excited for people to hear it. You can hear it it's out on all streaming platforms, iTunes, all that stuff. It's called My Heart Says Go. And yeah, we're just excited for people to hear it. I just was hopping on a Zoom call with Javier Munoz, who is also on. He plays the father of the lead character. And yeah, it's an exciting thing, and I'm stoked for people to hear it.
Super cool. And we love new musicals, new music. This will be in the show notes. So if you're on this episode, you'll have a link directly to
oh, great. Awesome.
in the show notes. All right, shall we get to our special game?
Let's do our game.
All right, awesome. So, as you know, of course, all of our artist guests get a unique game. Sometimes it's hard trivia, sometimes it's silly games.
Well, don't be hard trivia.
No, it's not hard. It won't be hard, I promise.
Okay.
Sometimes we make people spell, like Celia had to do spelling bee. It's terrible. I know. But no,
that makes
this
sense
is going to be a Name That Tune style game.
Oh,
I'm
love this.
Give you a line or a lyric. So it's either going to be line or lyric, or I'm going to play you a little snippet, hurdle style snippet from a show that you have done. And you have to guess, what is this show?
So I better get it right.
There's going to be a couple ones I throw in there that are not from shows you've done, just to make it a little harder.
Just
That's the challenge. Are you ready to play?
I'm ready for this.
Name That Tune style game. Okay, here we go.
Yes.
The first, we're going to start you off easy.
Okay.
Heart, stop racing. Let's face it, making mistakes like this will make worse what was already pretty bad.
Oh, I love hearing it as monologue. That's Bad Idea from the musical Waitress by Sarah Bareilles.
That is correct. That's more information than you need to get for the game, but it was great. That was
Waitress. Great.
Okay.
All you need is the show name. Okay, got it.
Did champagne lose its year for me? Love's haunting strain disappear for me? What could I do? She wasn't you.
That's from Montclair to You Can See Forever.
That's 100% correct. Okay, here we go. 2 for 2 so far.
Okay.
Were there signs and I didn't see them? A random remark? Occasional sigh? That day in the park? The gleam in his eye?
You've stumped me.
You basically won. That was not a show you've done. That's Thoroughly Modern Millie. I was just trying to
yes.
Can't be too easy here. Can't be too easy.
Okay. Totally.
Okay, here we go. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark.
Carousel.
That's Carousel. Okay, here we go.
Now carousel.
Carousel, yes, as we will. Now comes the audio medium part of this. This is like Jeopardy where they show the clip. I'm going to try to play a little snippet, and you're going to see. None of these will have lyrics, so it's going to be tricky.
Okay. Will You Love Me Tomorrow?
Oh my God, that was very quick. Okay, great. I'm going to give
those opening chords. Yeah, Will You Love Me
Too
Tomorrow?
easy. All right, it's going to be harder now. It's going to be harder. That's the song you sang.
Guys and Dolls. Feud for Tin Horns. Yeah.
Very good. That was very good. Okay, here we go.
Was that from Little Night Music?
It is not from Little Night Music. It's from Bridges of Madison County, but not a show you've done. All you had to do was
that beautiful cello line. Yeah. Okay.
No. Okay, here we go. The Shakespeare portion. You may my glories and my state depose, but not my griefs. Still am I king of those.
No idea.
Well, you just have to say it's not a show that you've done. You've correctly identified.
Oh, it's not a show I've done. What play is it from?
That's Richard II. Okay.
I haven't done that one.
Here we go. Yeah. Yet herein will I imitate the sun, who doth permit the base contagious clouds to smother up his beauty from the world.
I haven't done that. Have I done that one? The only Shakespeare I ever did was Henry IV.
That's Henry IV. That's Henry IV.
It is.
Part 1. We got our first actual stumper.
Okay, yeah, okay, that was a stumper.
All right, and last but not least,
I spoke in Welsh in that one. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay,
Welsh.
sorry.
You did one little thing. It's fine. A man could have bad dreams and not be all he seems, yet not be far removed from all the noblest of extremes.
I don't think I've done that.
That is the mystery of Edwin Drood. That is the mystery of Edwin Drood. A little song that's
a man could go quite mad. Is it from that song?
Yep. Can you believe it?
Yeah, that was a good one right after the Shakespeare. Very stumpable.
I tried to sneak it in,
That was good.
Okay. We have to wrap up for your time. I want to be conscious of that. So if people want to follow you, there's no social media for Jessie.
There's no social meds. Is that what the kids say?
That's what I say. So probably not. Because
social meds?
Kids probably don't say it anymore. But now, is that something, were you on and then now off? Or
no. You know what? I was on Facebook back in the day. And then, I went off of that. Back when Facebook was popular. And then, no, I just never got into the social media. I've always I'm so happy to engage in other people's stuff, especially when I'm working on shows and stuff. But for me personally, I don't have it for myself. So thank God. I think there are some fans out there that are following, projects I've been on and things. And I really appreciate that. Cause I don't do it for myself.
They're just going to have to click and listen to you on My Heart Says Go. My last question, I really will let you go, is just, any advice for young actors? If any young actors want to grow up and be Jessie Mueller, I know we've already given some, but any thoughts in terms of, what they can do to be a Jessie Mueller?
Yeah. Don't try to be Jessie Mueller. Go grow up to be yourself and know that it's going to take time and you're right where you're supposed to be. And you have to keep telling yourself that, I think. That and don't take anyone else's advice.
Except that advice, except that little bit you're supposed to take.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Thank you, Jessie. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
my
the time.
pleasure.
It was such a pleasure.